My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and this is 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the significant, and in this case, a very special choice in order to be fully alive and to bless the people around us. Today in the studio is my good friend, Dr. Tyler Schwanz, and we talk about our significant relationship with our parents, our grandparents, and those specific, special, and amazing mentors that we've had in our life, and how we can be an encouragement to them in a way that is so simple and strategic and will truly, truly make a difference. Listen in. Dr. Tyler Schwanz, my bro doc.
That's right.
My chiropractor, my friend, my mentor. I was thinking, how many episodes have you been on of 3 Words podcast? I have literally lost track, but I think with confidence say, now that we're over 200 episodes, that you have probably been the most frequent guest here in the studio. No question, because you have so many things to say. And I am excited about our conversation today, but presuming there are 1 or 2 people who are listeners and viewers who do not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a chiropractor. I've been doing that for 13 years. I have a couple of kids. I have a wife. I love snowboarding, and apparently I like being asked back to DMB 3 Words podcast, I suppose.
Yeah, and we love having you here. And your hobbies, though, are far more numerous than the ones you mentioned, but maybe we'll tie them into the conversations in the future. I just think you're a fascinating, adventurous human being, but I also think that as we spend time together, and even the other night as we spent time at dinner, just your love for your family, your commitment to people, the depth of your human connections is so notable. And so I think even these 3 words in this particular conversation will really come from, I think, the most authentic place of who you are. And so share that with the listeners if you would.
Yeah, so the 3 words today are call your parents.
Wow. Talk more about that.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, on my drive here, I called my mom and I told her, I said, hey, Mom, I'm going down to BG to talk on the 3 Words podcast. And what do you think I should talk about? And she said, well, what are the 3 words? And I said, call your parents. She's like, no, you're making it up. I wish I had the recording. She was so sweet. And she said, well, you're like the expert with the podcast stuff. So I don't know if I could share anything of value to you. But she said, you know what? We're all getting older and we feel it. And you just never know how many days you got left. And there's probably going to be a day when I go to call my parents and they don't answer or I can't. And I just think that that regret of thinking that I didn't do it enough would be something that would eat away at me. And so she said, you just don't want to have any regrets, Tyler. And so I just wanted to share that on my drive down here. When I called my mom, I think that, when you become a parent, to give life, that's like the very most immediate thing. Like when you're an infant, obviously you need your parents to even stay alive. And then the relationship grows and develops. And then you need them more for their nurturing. And then you need them more for their teaching, to teach you how to live life well. And then it kind of moves into more of like a mentoring relationship. And then you become friends. And so there's this unfortunate like crossing that happens where you need them the most in the beginning. So you talk to them constantly, probably more than they want. I'm a parent too. So sometimes my kids talk to me more than I even want. But like the more you get until eventually you have everything in life, the less you need them and the more tragically you probably talk to them. And just picking up the phone and calling your parents, it costs nothing, but to them, it means everything. And so I think it's a practice that we could all get just a little bit better at.
I agree with that. And it sounds like you have a tremendous advantage too, because obviously you live in the same geography as your parents. Yeah. I am curious, how close by miles is?
I live 6 minutes from my parents. I don't know how many miles, but I thought about that too, because I thought in preparing for this, I was like, do I call my parents very often? And truthfully, I don't call my parents very often, which may sound hypocritical, but I see my dad every day. I work with my dad. I see him every single day. And every week we get together on Thursdays for family dinner. So I do see my mom every single week in that capacity. But even that being said, I could probably still benefit from calling them more often, because when you call your parents, it's not just for them. Like when you call them, that's where unrequited, no, or not unrequited, undeserved love and zero judgment and grace and all of these things always reside. Like they may not always agree with me. They may not always agree with my decisions, but they certainly will always love me and always listen to me. And like I said, me being a parent myself, like one of the best things that my boys can say to me now, and they're 9 and 7, and is, Dad, you want to come chill with us? And
that's great.
In my mind, when they ask me that, and I of course say yes, I think, wow, like they are not going to be asking me to just chill with them and talk with them like that for forever. And I'm just going to soak it up. But I don't think that as a parent, you ever lose that desire to just chill with your kids and to just hear about their day. And it's hard to put yourself in their perspective sometimes when you're an adult. You forget what it's like. But now that I'm a parent, I think it does help me and motivate me to want to call my parents more.
And again, there's a principle that transcends the actual picking up the phone and calling, is having regular connection, regular conversations with the people that actually helped you exist, brought you into the world. And, and so I think that for my parents, they don't live, I mean, they're a couple hours away for part of the year, and then they're many, many, many states away for another part of the year. But I had someone recently say to me that every time you're with your parents, particularly at my age, I'm in my 50s, my parents are in their 70s and 80s, that every time you're with your parents later in life, there's probably not that many more times that you'll be with them in the same space. It could be, particularly if they live outside of your city, outside of your 6-minute drive. It could be a dozen times. It could be 24 times. It could be 5 times. That I don't think we should take those things for granted. You also mentioned, and I want to just put a pin on this and highlight it briefly, Tyler, is this idea that obviously for most of your life you need them, and then there comes a point where you don't need them as much anymore. But I also think there's a turning point where actually our parents begin to now need us.
Yeah.
And I think that's a gift to give back to them for emotional health, for human connection, to know that they are valued. But also the days come where you might need to provide even greater care because of just the aging process, starting to care for our parents. And in many ways, we start doing for our parents what they did for us, which I think comes a lot easier if you have that deep human connection, if you have been calling them regularly, if you're staying in contact, if the relationship is healthy, which, I mean, you and I both run businesses and have kind of our various ventures, but communication is everything. Communication is the lifeblood of relationships, and I think particularly with our parents. It's interesting too, I don't know your experience with this. I hear this a lot since we're talking about this unique parent-child relationship. It seems like parents are less prone to call their kids as they age because they don't want to be a burden. So in many ways, that responsibility and that burden rests with us to actually be taking the initiative. Do you sense that's true?
Absolutely. And, I still have both my grandmas. I don't have my grandpas anymore, but both my grandmas, and one of them now lives again within that 6-minute drive. And I get to see her every single week at family dinner as well. And she didn't always live this close to us. She lived in Lansing for a long time. And growing up, my parents would bring us up for holidays and make sure that we knew my grandmas, my grandparents. And, but then as she got a little bit older, you could see it in her physically, that emotional drain of not feeling needed, not feeling like you have as much value because you're not working, you're not bringing things to people or doing things for people. And sometimes their value gets tied up in that. And I think, grandparents, parents use them interchangeably. Like it's all on the same scale. We're all heading in that direction. And if we can reaffirm for them that they do have value, that they are so important to us, that is probably what they need to hear most. Because I know that since my grandma moved near to us, like her physical health took an absolute turn for the better. Just being around us, just, being around her great grandchildren. And it's just a basic human need as we grow and develop. And in that same vein, if as we grow older, we need them less and less, that means that we're with them by choice. And who doesn't want to have somebody choose them above anybody else that they could be talking to or spending time with, to be chosen by your kids? Dad jokes aside, the older we get, the more our kids start to rib on us. And I like to think my dad likes it. He's a good sport about it. And I've seen you interact with your boys. And
they have no problem doing that.
And I love that. Yeah. And I love that. It's a sign of love. It's a sign of comfort when you can do that. And like, who are you more comfortable with? Your friends that you don't see very often, that you don't speak with, but just for a few holidays, or the ones that you're doing life with on a very regular basis every single day? Those are the people that you can laugh with, and they can come over and you can be dressed in whatever, and the house can be dirty and it's no big deal. Like, these are your parents. These are the friends that you could be if only you put in the effort to be a friend. Sometimes we take for granted the fact that they will always be there because they, like, not physically, because we know, but that they'll always be there for us as long as they're on this earth. But what about like putting effort into that friendship and not losing out on arguably what could be the best season of our life together, when all the other times they needed to be a teacher and a mentor, and they needed to be their very best. They need to be buttoned up. Well, now I can tell dirty jokes to my dad. Now I can share stories with my mom about stuff we did in college that I wasn't going to tell her then. This is some of the best stuff, and you just miss out on that if you neglect the relationship because you get too busy.
Ironically, I'm going to hit pause on my conversation with Tyler to, of course, encourage you to hit the pause button. And in this moment, before you finish the rest of the episode, call your parents, or those special people in your life that you want to say thank you. Now back to the conversation. I didn't expect the conversation to go there, but you really highlighted an incredible point in that most of our interactions our kids have with us as they're growing, particularly through the adolescent and teenage years and even into their 20s, is around this notion, I need. Mm-hmm. In fact, we have a little joke in our family that sometimes my kids, I get the text messages when there's one of the 3 C's: cash, concern, or criticism. I'm not happy with this. I'm concerned about this. Will you help me? And I need cash. And it's like, which is fine. I don't mind responding to those things. And yet the reality is, I know I'm needed, but it is nice when I'm not needed. Because like you said, actually those initiatives then probably will connect more with me, because it's like, they're not calling for anything that they need, because they're fine. They're independent. In fact, we want them, right, to be independent and so forth. Another thought I had, because I think I'm just cognizant of the fact I have an amazing dad and stepmother, but my mom died at a young age. So I'm guessing she passed when she was 36. I was 14. So I'm guessing that some of our listeners and viewers are thinking, wow, I'd love to call my parents, but my parents are gone.
Yeah.
And that may be because we have listeners that are older, that parents lived a full life. And there might be those who are listening who maybe they lived a shorter life than we would have hoped and expected. But I think this, again, the principles we talk in 3 Words Podcast and the episodes and the practices we share can be transplanted and can actually evolve into other areas. But I think to think about who are those parent figures in our life. You mentioned grandparents. There's probably aunts and uncles. There's significant mentors in our life that are 20, 30, 40 years older than us that fall within that category of, these have been people that have been caregivers. These have been individuals that have taken care of me, that have played a significant mentoring role. I think that we can apply this same principle of calling our parents to actually calling those folks as well. Yeah. And they would probably even be more surprised.
Absolutely.
To get the phone call, hey, I was thinking about the impact you made on my life when I was in my 20s. I was thinking about that conversation we had when I was 30 and I was struggling with this. And I just want you, again, my mind's beginning to kind of go down that road thinking, how can I make a list of people that I want to call that would be kind of in that parent realm?
And you remember the student at BGSU who I introduced you to? And what a joy when years later he sends me an unsolicited text message. I think you gave him my phone number, and he just said, hey, thank you so much for how you led me and exposed me to chiropractic. And, now I'm doing this, and he's doing great things, and he's just a remarkable young man. And I'm not his father, but in that moment, for that couple days when he came and shadowed, maybe I served as a mentor role, like that made my day.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And so to get that call, I think would be incredible. And maybe this is a different podcast completely, but if we're talking about like our earthly parents, just like I bet we probably treat prayer a lot like calling our parents. Like we only talk to our Heavenly Father when we need cash or have a concern or a complaint, and rarely when we have something that's to be thankful for or grateful for or just to talk. I'm sure that our Heavenly Father wants to just chat with us on a more regular basis, on a very regular basis, just like our earthly parents do as well.
Well, I think one of the things that actually one of our lists of potential podcasts down the road is talk to God. so maybe that's, are you selling yourself for your 40th podcast episode?
Maybe. Not the
well, again, what a fantastic conversation. Obviously the 3 words are simple. They're not rocket science.
Right.
There's nothing difficult or challenging about them in regards to understanding them, but in practice, they literally can be a transformative choice that not only is a blessing to us, but a tremendous blessing to some very, very special people in our lives. So thanks for the conversation today, Tyler. And of course, we'll have you back.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you know, as listeners and viewers of 3 Word Podcasts, we do not take you for granted. We love being on this journey with you. We would invite you to actually visit our website, dmbcoaching.com/subscribe, where you can actually deepen your relationship with us, receive fresh content on a regular basis to actually continue to grow through around these topics that we talk about here in the studio. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.